thank you everyone for attending the presentation today. We appreciate your time, and we hope that you'll learn something of value as we review the bin tracking module for Sage 300. So to start off with, there's a couple of different setup options that I wanted to discuss with you, and then we'll take a look at how we create bins within Sage 300, which essentially allow you to subclass your IC locations so that you've got more specific information about where precisely in your warehouse a certain part or item is stored. But before we do that, let me just highlight the transaction types that you're able to record bin transfers against. Because the concept with bin tracking is that we want to track picks and putaways based on the movement of inventory, which can be initiated through various types of transactions within Sage 300. So as you can see here, there's a number of different inventory control transactions, whether they be IC receipts and shipments, adjustments, transfers, assemblies, disassemblies. So depending on what you're doing within Sage 300, it might have an impact on tracking the movement of inventory. We've also got the standard OE, order entry, OE shipment, PO receipt, PO return. And Steve was mentioning that he also is using RMA, or potentially could use RMA if he's tracking returns. So as we generate an OE credit note and we receive those items back into stock against that credit, we can also track the put away of those items. So with these options, you can manually create bin transfers, you can do it during posting, and most of our clients would manage the bin transfer as an automated process during posting. Before I go any further, let me just show you what a bin transfer looks like and what we're trying to track within the system. So in this case of an OE credit note, we're putting away an item back into stock that's been returned to us from a customer. And so there's going to be a source document, in this case a credit note, that will give rise to a put away action on a specific item that will then be put into a bin that we have predefined as a primary bin for that item. Now, as you're creating these bins, you're also able to define what bins can store items and what bins do not store those items. So as part of the bin setup, you'll see that under an IC location, we have a number of different bins that can be outlined. Now, there's nothing magical about these bin numbers. They're simply a 10-digit alphanumeric code where you have to create the logic within that bin number. And that bin number will generally relate to some sort of configuration in your warehouse. So that could be an aisle, a row, a rack, a height, different shelving. It could be a quarantine area. So you might decide that you're going to create a quarantine location within inventory control, and you want to be able to store items for testing or inspection before you release them to a bin in the warehouse where they can be picked from for shipping purposes. And so when we talk about bin tracking, we're talking about the module in isolation today, but we could incorporate quality control procedures as part of the bins. We can also incorporate barcoding technology. So as you're doing your PO receipts, you could scan the item and the system would know which bin you want it to go to. Likewise, on a pick for an OE shipment, you could define a barcode that you could scan and then choose the bin that you want to pick from. Now, the other thing to notice is that within the bin tracking module, so we have this pick order and put away order where we can define a primary, secondary, tertiary bin, so that as we fill one bin, the system will know to put away to a secondary bin on a put away, or from a pick, if we're picking on an order and we run out of quantities within one bin, it will know to go to the next available bin or the secondary bin based on our pick order. When we define the item that's part of that bin, we can choose to allow different units of measure. So while your stocking unit is typically in each, the lowest common denominator, we could put away and pick based on a case or a skid even, depending on the different types of unit of measure that you use for your inventory. The other thing to note is that you don't have to put everything that you have in inventory into a bin. So we're not forcing you to store 100% of the items in a bin. You can bin certain items and not all items, or you can bin a certain quantity of an item, but not the entire 100% quantity that you have in IC. So that's why we identify a quantity and inventory control, which is distinct from a quantity that you've got stored within the bin. So it is possible to end up with variances between what's in a bin and what's in total inventory, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you have a problem within inventory. The restocking level is a safety stock measurement where as soon as you go below a restocking level in terms of the quantity within that bin, we have a replenishment report that you can run that will show you all bins that need to be replenished based on that restocking level. And then the restocking quantity is the quantity that would be used to restock that bin. Now, we had the discussion earlier about serial numbers. If you're going to use serial numbers or lot numbers with your items, you'll be able to store those serial numbers and lot numbers with the quantity of that item within a bin. So in this way, we're creating a 3-level hierarchy of information about your items. The highest level is the IC location. Within a location, we can have a bin, and within that bin, we can have a quantity that can also track serial numbers and lot numbers. But it's important to note that we're only concerned with quantities at the bin level. All of the costing remains as part of the standard inventory control module. So anything that has to do with costing, pricing for the item is still managed in inventory control. We're only interested in tracking movement and quantity of movement for your items when we talk about bin tracking. Okay, so just want to be clear on that. When you initialize the system, you can do it a couple of different ways. Typically, we'd recommend you do a physical stock count, and we have our own physical inventory bin worksheet as opposed to the IC physical inventory worksheet. And this allows you to do a stock take and then populate all of the bins based on the quantities that you count at a bin level on the physical inventory count worksheet. And this ensures that your quantities are accurate from the get-go, and it's a nice way for you to start off using bin tracking. But if you don't have time to do a physical stock count, then you can simply do a bin transfer and transfer items from a non-binned to a binned condition. So you can take on a number of items or some of the items within inventory through a bin transfer entry if you'd like to do it that way. So then coming back to the options, we've got all these different transactions that we can create bin transfer entries for. And the pick method is generally auto pick, but you also can manually pick or auto pick and complete. And I would say 90% of our clients auto pick, because what this does then is it relies on the pick order that you've already created as part of the bin setup. And then the system will make a recommendation as to which bin to pick from. Whether you choose to pick from that bin can still be overridden if we don't choose auto pick and complete. So that's why most people would choose auto pick as the pick method. When we come to putaways, we have the same options: manual, auto put away, and complete. And again, the same logic would apply where you want the system to recommend the bin that you want to put away to, but then the operator could still override that if necessary. Now there is a default put away bin too, and this is slightly different. This is going to be based on whether you like a LIFO, last in, first out, or a FIFO, first in, first out type of movement for your items. Because the options that you have here allow you to choose the last bin that you picked from. So in this case, the assumption is that we're putting away and picking from the same bin most of the time. So we're always going to be picking from the last bin picked from. Now you can also put away the last bin that you put away to. And in this case, we generally make the assumption that you've got a put away bin where you're quarantining items for inspection, and then you'll move them to another bin for picking purposes or staging for shipment. And then you can also use the bin setup put away order, which will take a look at how you've set up the bins and decide, based on the quantity and available space in a bin, what bin you should put away to. The pop-up bin transfer, that is when I'm doing a PO receipt or an OE shipment, I can actually pop up a separate window that shows the bin transfer and the bin that we're going to be picking from or putting away to. And that's only necessary if you want people to see that information and have the option to override the default settings. Otherwise, you would say no, and you would just go ahead and allow people to pick, knowing that the system's going to choose the bin based on what's available within the bins. So I'll show you a PO receipt so you can see that pop-up bin transfer happening. And then we'll do an OE shipment as well, just so you can see the process working, and then generate a pick slip so you can see that we've modified the forms in Sage 300 to show the bins, not just the quantity that's being picked or put away within Sage 300. Okay, so as I say, we'll generate these bin transfer documents as we do other transactions within Sage 300. And the only other options that I wanted to discuss quickly were the ability to say, I can have all items bin tracked or only certain items bin tracked. I touched on that previously, but this is where you would actually configure that within the system. And then you can tell it things like the next bin transfer number and different units of measure, things like that, and whether you want to allow bin transfers with no source documents or whether there's a warning if there's no source document available. So let's go ahead and do a PO and a PO receipt, and we'll show you the PO receipt side that will have the bin transfer pop-up. Now I could do this using a barcode system as well, so if you're interested in seeing that, I'll hold that to the end and do a quick entry to show you the barcode interface. But for now, what we'll do is we'll create a new PO and we'll purchase an item that is bin tracked. So we'll just choose vendor 1200. Now what you're seeing popping up on the right hand side, you might have noticed that when I was looking at the bin transfer, and you've got it here within PO. This has got nothing to do with bin tracking per se. This is our document management and notes solution. So this is the ability to attach documents and notes to any screen, any field within Sage 300. So that's why that's popping up. So let's do a PO receipt to bin tracking. And I'll just put that in as a reference so that we've got some information. And we'll choose an item. I'll just pick the first item. And you see, again, we're popping up notes here. These are context-sensitive notes that have hyperlinks to websites, documents, or just other notes. So it can be a handy tool. We'll choose location 1. And we'll choose a quantity of 10. And I'll go ahead and I'll post this. So this is just the PO that I'm creating at this point. So PO 47. And then we'll receive against PO 47. And this is where we'll see the bin transfer document created. So we want to take a look at the vendor number 1200. And the PO was 47. So we'll choose the last one here, 47. And I'm going to go ahead and receive all, which is the quantity of 10. And it's the posting routine. Remember, when we set up bin tracking, we said we want to create the bin transfer during posting. So I have to post the PO receipt, and it will then generate a bin transfer document. And I've asked the system to pop up that bin transfer document. I won't print the receipt, and the PO receipt has been recorded now. And behind the scenes, we see the bin transfer document. So this is what we're talking about that gets generated automatically to record the put away against the PO receipt 103 that we just generated, the quantity of 10, and the system has chosen my primary put away bin for that item. Now if I wanted to override that, I could do that at this point, and say I'd actually like to allocate 5 to one bin and 5 to another bin if I wanted to do that. But my stocking quantity went from 403 to 413. And that's automatically been assigned to that bin for me. We give you the username, the date, and a timestamp as well, so you can see when that bin transfer was taking place. And this is the significance of not choosing auto put away and complete. It gives us the ability to change anything that's required this step. You would just let the system choose the bins. So I can go ahead and set this to complete if I want. And there is a drill down capability, so I could drill and go back to see the actual receipt if I wanted to see the source document as part of the entry. So that's essentially how bin tracking is working from the PO side or the put away. From an OE side, let's go ahead and do a quick sales order, and I'll just show you the other side, and this time it'll be a pick. And then we can talk about the process of picking slip versus packing slip, because that's something that comes up whenever we talk about bin tracking. So I'll generate a quick sales order for the same item, create a new sales order. This time we'll use customer 1200. And choose the same fluorescent desk lamp. And let's go ahead and sell the 10 that we just bought from location 1. And that's our expected ship date, which is fine. The quantity ordered is 10. And we'll go ahead and post. So again, this is just creating the sales order. Now I could have done the shipment here as well. And there's also a credit check. Well, I hope that doesn't stop me from, That's interesting, we have a credit check. Well, let's see if admin can do the approval. Hopefully we can proceed through this. I didn't realize this company had a check. Okay. It looks like I do have the rights to be able to generate that order, and I do. So, oh, I see what's happening. I've got an email notification going on here. We're using another solution called Extender to generate an email for the order confirmation to be automatically emailed to the customer. And that's why there was a bit of a delay there. I was looking for an SMTP server to send the email to the customer to notify them that we've got their order in place. So now I've got order 92. We'll go ahead and do the shipment. This time we're not going to pop up the bin transfer. If you remember in the settings, we said no to the pop-up. We're just going to generate the pick automatically, and then we'll go over to the bin transfer screen in bin tracking to show what actually happened as far as the pick goes. So it's customer 1200, and it's the last order to them, which is down here from March the 27th, and it'll pick up the fluorescent desk lamp, and we'll go ahead and we'll ship all. So we're going to ship the quantity of 10 on order and go ahead and post. And oh, we're getting an approval to do the shipment there. Now what you're seeing here are the dynamic notes. You see these things in blue. The dynamic notes just mean from this window I could actually drill down to see other orders that the customer has outstanding with us or has previously bought from us. So let's go ahead and print the picking slip, and for that shipment 72 that we just created. And this will just highlight that on the picking slips, it will show the bin that we picked from, unless of course. Okay, I'm not sure why that didn't work that way. Oh, probably didn't pick. I should have chosen the by lot. I'll go ahead and print the forms from over here. But before we do that, let me go over and show you the bin transfer over here. So if you remember, that was shipment 72. So my last bin transfer should be based on that shipment entry. There's the OE shipment. There's the pick that was done for the quantity of 10. And it shows that bin. So this highlights an issue that some people raise of a picking slip versus a packing slip. We generally, in Sage 300, generate a packing slip as opposed to a picking slip. It's called a pick slip, but because we generate the bin transfer on the posting of the shipment, it's assuming that you're going to be shipping from that bin, as opposed to saying, I'd like to see all the bins that are potentially available and choose to pick and then go ahead and post the shipment. So if that's the case, then there is pick, pack, and ship solutions available for Sage 300 that allow you to see the bins prior to posting the shipment. So we can talk about that a little bit more if there's a question about that at the end of the session. But I just wanted to show you that we've provided customized picking slips and other forms within the OE module that will show the bins that we're picking from when we do shipment entries using the bin transfer. So there's shipment 72, picking slip for the quantity of 10, and you saw the bin transfer used the 010102 bin. So we're going to be adding that information to your standard forms within Sage 300 so that you've got the information based on the bins, not just the quantity being shipped. So the last thing I wanted to show then was a couple of things in terms of reporting and inquiry features for bin transfers. And I'll highlight one more time the fact that we can create our physical inventory as a bin worksheet instead of the standard IC worksheet. And what this introduces is the concept of cycle counts, because now you're not forced to count 100% of your inventory in inventory control. You will have the option to use a bin inventory count worksheet and count by bin or range of bin. So the concept of cycle counts is a good concept that gets introduced when you incorporate bin tracking within Sage 300. But you've also got some analytical reports, such as the bin transfer reconciliation or bin totals versus location totals. When you print this report, as I mentioned before, you don't have to bin 100% of all of your items. So you will see situations where you have a bin quantity and a total bin quantity and a variance, because within that location you've got more items than you've got binned, or vice versa. You may have more in the bin than you've got in the quantity. Now in that case, the variance is a real variance, but you're going to have to figure out why your location quantity is less than what you say you've got in your bins. Or you may find that you go to the bin and it's not there and it wasn't properly transferred out for some reason. So in those circumstances, you would want to investigate to find out why you've got those variances. But in other cases where you've got a total quantity in inventory for that location of 428, but a bin quantity of 425, that variance of 3 may be that you've just not binned all 428 of your halogen desk lights. So this is the main purpose of this report, is just to identify where you have variances. In a lot of cases, you won't have variances because you're binning 100% of the items. But in some cases, you will have variances, and obviously these negative variances need to be investigated. And there are different sort and select options that you have. The bin replenishment report was the one that uses the restocking level so that you can identify bins that need to be replenished if you're in the habit of putting away to one area and then having a staging area that is binned. You also have the option to print off a report to show any empty bins within the warehouse, so you know where there's available space and you can allocate excess stock to this space if that's required. And there's a bin transfer history that would just simply show you all the history of every bin transfer that's been made in the system. The only form is a copy of the bin transfer document if you feel you want to print that off, although most cases you won't need that. And then in terms of periodic processing, it's just a way to deactivate empty bins. So if there's space in the warehouse that you're not utilizing anymore and you just want to get rid of it, you can deactivate those bins if you'd want to. The inquiries allow you to sort how you run the inquiry. So you've got the ability to come in and sort by location bin item bin, item location bin, or item bin location. And as you change the sort order, it just changes that on the screen. So I'm sorting by location now, and then item, and then bin. Or I could say, no, actually, I want to do location bin item, and then it'll sort by location and then by the bins, so you have an idea of what's in each of the bins. And you can modify that depending on your requirements.